Hello, welcome to another exciting episode. Today we're going to be talking about vlogging. That's an example of the difference between phonetics and phonology. So if you remember, phonetics is the theory, right? How sounds are supposed to sound versus phonology. Here we have this example. You've probably heard about this debate, Yanni and Laurel. So, what do you hear? I hear Laurel. All I hear is Laurel all day long. This might be a great topic for a final project if you're interested in finding out why some people hear Yanni and some hear Laurel. And why Yanni is not the right answer. Just kidding. I don't hear it. Okay. So phonetics is the theory. Phonetics, just to quick recap, is the investigation of sound as a physical phenomenon. So how sounds are made. Remember the parts of the body where sounds are made. You have to have air. It has to come up to the voice vocal cords, and then the resonator is your mouth. Also how they're classified, the big charts I showed you, how they're interpreted, and how they physically move through space. So now we're going to go on to phonology, which is one of my favorites in linguistics. This is about the psychology of speech sounds, okay? How sounds interact within a given language. So how does one sound maybe dominate over the other sound? Or why is it that we have, for example, turned I want to be into I want to be? Why? Why do people do that? We don't really accept it as a word, wanna. However, it's so common. You hear it in songs and normal everyday speech, right? Because your mouth just wants to link those together. So that's sounds interacting. Then we have sound patterns, sound change, and sound distributions. Okay. So psychology of sound systems, we're looking at the mental organization of a sound system. This is language specific, so each language will have a different mental organization, a different sound system. There may be similarities within languages, but each language has its own specific one. We're also looking at the relationship between sounds in a linguistic system, sound hierarchies, one predominates over the other, the processes of pronunciation change, why pronunciation changes from I want to I wanna, and grammaticality of pronunciation, what's permissible, what's logical. What do you think? So here we have a universal syllable template. This is how all sounds are organized. Physically and mentally, all sounds are organized into syllables, and those syllables are strung together to make words, right? They may be strung together in agglutinative languages all together, but this is how it works. So if I have the word cat, the onset is the C, k. Nucleus is a vowel, is a vowel, a. And coda is the end, t, k, at. So if you've ever watched Sesame Street when you were a kid, or your kids watch it, you know that phonemic awareness is important, and you start out reading by pronouncing the letters you see until you see letters that aren't pronounced, and then it gets a little tricky, right? But at, cat, right? We are going to recognize this one syllable together, all together. So if I have a word like catalyst, cat, is that syllable that will be together. Okay. Phonotactic constraints. So in some languages, you allow for certain sound sequences. In other languages, you don't. Most languages tend to prefer the consonant vowel. That's the most common structure. So here we have vlogging. And I'm going to tell you why. It's an awesome word. Somebody made up that word, vlog, video logging, coming from blog. And the BL is an acceptable sound sequence, the consonant that goes together at the onset, bull, like black. But the VL, we don't have it in English. Well, now we do. But it'll be difficult for some people to pronounce. So let's get into that a little bit. Also, syllable structures, as I mentioned, are language specific. So depending on what language, because the VL combination for the onset is actually common, let's say in Russian, where you have Vladimir Putin, right? Okay. Syllable structures actually are very complex, and so I'm going to explain a little bit about that, just so you're aware. So we have onset. Remember, we have the onset, then the middle part, the nucleus, which is the vowel, and then the coda. So English phonotactics for onsets, allowing up to three consonants in the onset, so no more than three. And a good example would be strengths, the STR together, stir, right? The first one must always be an S. The second one could be a P, T, K. They're all voiceless, right? So let's say spring, right? Or street, yeah? Or skirt, which doesn't really apply. And then the third must be a liquid or a glide, okay? Liquid is the L or the R in English, R, or the L, or W. So, yeah, as well, yeah. So if you see in this list down here, you can see that consonant, vowel, consonant. So those three consonants in a row, that will be a part of the onset. That will be the onset. So you have these examples: splash, spread, split, right? Scripts, sprints. So you're not going to have more than three for the onset. The first segment's always S, the second segment is voiceless, and then you have the third segment, okay? The nuclei, if we're looking at nuclei, we're looking at vowels. In other languages, the nuclei may not be a vowel, right? Most nuclei vowels in English are monophthongs, which means that they have, kind of means like they have one sound, versus a diphthong. The two diphthongs we have in English are O, or A. That's it. So, Kate. No? You hear that? That's kind of elongated. In other languages, you wouldn't elongate that, but in English you do. Okay. And then we have the codas. The first segment is always either an L, an R. This upside down R is the English R, which is very difficult for some people. And a ng. Then the second segment, p, t, k, the voiceless, and then you have ch. Or no, sorry. Th, and the. The. And then the third is S. So in strengths is ng, th, s. But you'll see in the next episode how this also may end up adding a k. Strengths. Blah, I can't even say it. Strengths. Okay. So that's what we have. That's why I'm looking at the word vlogging, because the first segment, for if you're looking at consonants that go together at the onset of a syllable, there's no VL. There's a BL, but there's no VL. So we will continue with this. I'm going to talk about phonemes and allophones in our next episode. See you soon.